Hello again. Let's make today's math lesson short and sweet. We are going to do a warm-up, a math message, and then I'll teach you a lesson all about number grids. You are going to respond on Seesaw by using the template and by turning in page 176 in your math journal. That's a page of math boxes. Okay, let's get started. You'll need your math notebook so you can do the math warm-up with me. I'm not going to show you my screen today. I'm actually going to do the warm-up with you and demonstrate what we're doing. So keep following along. Today we're going to be drawing base 10 blocks in our notebook, and then we're going to compare two sets of base 10 blocks. So here's what I mean by that. Okay, I'm going to take my clean page or my notebook or whatever I'm using, and I'm going to draw one long and 8 cubes over here, one long, 8 cubes, and then 4 longs over here. Now, after you draw those base 10 blocks, our job is to compare the two numbers. I like to put a little box in the middle just so that I know that I'm going to be drawing a symbol to compare. Remember, when we compare, we draw symbols like greater than, less than, or equal to. So, which way will the alligator mouth be open in this situation? Is this one bigger or is this one bigger? Well, this one says 18, this one says 40. So 40 is bigger. Let's make the alligator mouth open towards the 40. So this is what every problem on your math notebook page is going to look like. The next one is 6 longs and 18 cubes. 18 cubes. So 6 longs and 18 cubes on the same side. And then in the middle, I like to draw that box just to know that I have a space to draw my symbol. On the other side, we're going to draw 7 longs and 8 cubes. So we had 6 longs and 18 cubes. Then we had 7 longs and 8 cubes. Please count up the numbers on both sides and put a symbol in the middle. Would it be greater than, less than, or equal to? All right, the last one is going to show 5 longs and 10 cubes. 5 longs, 10 cubes. And 1 long and 5 cubes. 1 long, 5 cubes. Count up those numbers and figure out what symbol goes in the middle to compare the two. Is it greater than, less than, or equal to? All right, the next part of our lesson is the math message, and this is like a question that I ask you after the math warm-up, and it leads into our lesson. So today's lesson is all about number grids. This is a little problem that you'll need to solve in your math notebook. So I had space below these base 10 blocks to draw this. If you don't have space, then go to the next page. But you're going to draw a rectangle. This rectangle is going to be divided into 1, 2, 3 parts, and it's representing one little chunk of a number grid. So in the middle goes the number 48. Our job is to figure out what number will go on top of 48 and what number goes on bottom of 48. Take a second to figure that out right now. What goes here, what goes here, and then I'll be teaching you some strategies for figuring this out. All right, so however you solved that problem, whether it was in your head or using a number grid or counting on your fingers or whatever, as long as you got the right answer, then you were correct. Let's look for the right answer. If we know that 48 was the number in the middle of that rectangle, we were looking for the number at the top and the bottom of 48. So right here, using my number grid, it tells me exactly what number goes on top and goes on bottom. Now, what we are actually doing here is saying, here's 48, 10 less than 48 is 38. 10 more than 48 is 58. Remember, every time we go up or down on a number grid, we're counting by tens. When we go side to side on a number grid, we're counting by ones. Remember those number grid books that you filled out? Some of you finished them and some of you didn't. We were trying to count to 1,000, and every page had a number grid on it that got you closer and closer to 1,000, and you had to fill out those pages to put in the right numbers that were missing. Well, a lot of you used different strategies. Some of you were counting by ones as you went across the page. Some of you were filling in columns. So you were going up and down because you noticed that at the back of the number in one column, the ones place is always the same. Like in this column that I'm touching right here, it's all nines, right? So the ones place stays the same when you go up and down. It's the tens place that changes when you go up and down. That's because you're adding or subtracting 10 as you go up and down. Some of you noticed when we were doing those books that when you go side to side, the tens place stays the same, except for this very last number in the row. And the ones place is the one that gets higher and higher, counting by ones. That's really important to know because it helps you use a number grid, but it also is just helping you understand how numbers work and how they're related to each other. Today we're looking at chunks of a number grid. So in those books that I asked you to do a long time ago, when we were counting to 1,000, you had a number grid, but some of the numbers were missing. Today, we're going to kind of do the opposite. We're going to take a chunk of the number grid out and fill in the missing numbers around a little chunk of the number grid. And I'll show you that in just a second. Here, I have a number grid and some of the numbers are missing. Okay, so here's number 43, and I have 4 numbers blocked off around the number 43. Well, in order to solve this, I have to know that 43 is here. If I go up 1 from 43, I'm subtracting 10. So what is 10 less than 43? Say it out loud to yourself right now, and let's see if you're right. What is 10 less than 43? Let's pull this off and see. It's 33. You could have figured that out because you know how to subtract 10, or you can figure it out by looking at a complete number grid. This one has some numbers blocked off, but this one is complete in the back of your journal. So if I'm looking for the number that is 10 less than 43, I go boop, up 1, and I just subtracted 10 because my numbers are getting smaller as I go up on the number grid. Okay, what number is 10 more than 43? That's what happens when I go down 1 from a number on a number grid. Say it to yourself right now, and let's see if you're right. 10 more than 43 is 53. Again, I can figure that out because I know how to add numbers on a number grid. I can figure it out because I know how to add 10. I know how to change the tens place, 1. I know how to use a number grid, and if I look at 43 and I go down 1, I get 53. There's a few different ways you can solve these, but just know that you can use whatever way you are comfortable with, as long as you're getting the right answer. Now, here's 43. We have to figure out the numbers that are next door. We said, well, counting side to side on a number grid means you're counting by ones. So next to 43 over here is going to be 1 smaller than 43. What is 1 smaller than 43? Let's take it off and find out. There it is, 42. 42 is one smaller, one less than 43. Now, you can use a number grid to solve this. You could also just say, what is 1 less than 3? Oh, it's 2. And I know that the tens place is staying the same when I'm moving side to side. It's the ones place that's changing. Okay, here's 43. What's 1 more than 43? Let's see if you're right. Gotta get this off here. 1 more than 43 is 44. So again, you've increased the number by 1. You can count up 1 to figure out what is 1 more than 43. Okay, so back to that problem that we did for the math message. Here was 48. When I show the number that is 10 less, the ones place stays the same, doesn't it? That 8 is staying the same. It's the tens place that changed. The tens place is 10 less. Same down here when I said what number was 10 more, the ones place stays the same. It's the tens place that changes. So when I'm counting by tens, the tens place changes. When I'm counting by ones, the ones place changes. That's why it's so important that you know the difference between the tens place and the ones place in a number. I feel like we get asked that on almost every test we take in the second half of the school year. It's really important that you know that the ones place is in the back of the number, the tens place comes in front of the ones place, and then we have places like hundreds and thousands, and those you'll work more with next year and as you get older. Okay, now our next job is to open our math journal to page 179. On page 179, we see number grid puzzles. Now, these aren't really like puzzles that you put together. These are like chunks of a number grid that you need to solve the missing numbers for. They don't give you the whole number grid, so you have to just solve the little pieces that are missing. So, in order to do this, you can count by tens and ones, or you can look at a number grid, which you have in the back of your book, and that can help you to solve these as well. Okay, so this number shows 27. Let's start by counting 1 less than 27. What's 1 less than 27? Oh, easy. That's 26, right? We just counted back 1. And then we can say 26, 27, 28. 1 more than 27 is 28. Now we can count back and forward by tens. The number that's on top of 27 is going to be 10 less. What is 10 less than 27? Well, if I look at my number grid, here's 27. The number that's 10 less is 17. I'm going up on the number grid, and the numbers are getting smaller. When I show a number below, that means I'm adding 10. I'm showing 10 more. Again, my ones place isn't going to change here. The tens place is going to change. So if I show 17, 27, oh, I know there's going to be a 7 at the back of that number. I just have to figure out what the tens place would be. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means that the two numbers that are missing here are 37 and 47 because those are showing the tens place going up by 1. I'm adding 10 when I go down on the number grid. Okay, number 2. I see 72. We're going to count by ones here. We're going up because we're moving this way on the number grid. So figure that out. And then we're showing the numbers that are underneath 72. So we're counting by tens to show what is 10 more than 72 and what is 10 more than that number. The ones place will stay the same. Number 3 is showing 84 down here. That means we need to show 10 less than that, 1 less than this number in the middle, and 1 more than that number. All right, on number 4, they're showing only the number 48, and then they showed some gray squares. I put X's on mine just to show you that you don't have to fill those in. However, you can fill them in if it helps you to solve the problem. So here's 48. Remember, we're counting 10 less, 10 more, 10 more than that. Over here, we're going to go 1 less than that number in the middle. How do we figure out what goes here? Well, I said this is 48. 48 plus 10, 10 more, means the 1's place stays the same. The 10's place goes up 1, so that means 58. Now I need to come over here and figure out 1 less than 58. That's going to go in this X box that is, I'm not actually going to fill in. 1 less than 58 would be 57. I don't have to write that number. I can if I want to, but I don't have to. I do have to write this number. 1 less than 57 is 56. So 56 is the number that goes in that little spot that's all by itself over there. Okay, the next page is pretty similar, but it kind of shows the whole number grid. It's just that you don't have to fill in the whole number grid. So on page 180, that's what we're looking at next right here. Sorry, I'm trying to get this in the camera all the way. There we go. It says fill in the missing numbers. You don't have to fill in the missing numbers where there are blue squares. You do have to fill in the missing numbers where there are black squares. So these missing numbers will be counting by 1s going up from 2. And then there's a blue one here. You don't have to fill that in. Then it says 7. Then there's a blue one here. You don't have to fill that in. 9. Count up 1 from 9. And then you're going to do the rest of it. So like I said, anywhere there's a blue square, I mean, you can fill it in if you really want to, but you don't have to. We're only trying to fill in these like puzzle pieces that they've outlined in black for us. Now, you don't have to actually turn this page in. I had to pick and choose which pages you needed to turn in today because you can only turn in so many pages on Seesaw. This is really important for you to do because it is a real thinker. It helps your brain think about the relationships between numbers, between 10 more, 10 less, 1 more, 1 less. This is really helpful for you to do. I'm not asking you to turn it in. I'm asking you to turn in a page of math boxes today. Okay, the page of math boxes that I'm asking you to do is page 176 today. I will read these through for you. If you don't need me to read them to you, then you may pause the video and do it on your own. Otherwise, keep watching and follow along. Number 1 says, circle all the attributes the two shapes have in common. So, there's two shapes there, and then they have a bunch of sentences here that could describe the shapes. So it says we're circling only the things that both shapes have. So this one says they have straight sides. Is that true for both shapes? If it is true, then circle it. They have square corners. Remember, a square corner is like an L. Do both shapes have all square corners? If that's true, then circle it. They have curved sides. If that's true, then circle it. They are shaded. That means they're colored in. If that's true, then circle that. Number 2 says, draw hands to show 7 o'clock. Number 3 says, find the rule. So they show you numbers here, 56, 66, 76, 86. What rule are all those numbers following? Number 4 says, use less than, greater than, or equal to. This is exactly what we did in our warm-up today. We counted base 10 blocks, and we used a symbol in the middle to compare the two numbers. Number 5 says, subtract. Now, remember, they give you a unit box, but they don't tell you what you're subtracting. So you just have to make up something that you would like to subtract. But 9 minus 8 goes here. 90 minus 80 is a very similar problem. So think about that. How are those two related? Same with 5 minus 4 and 50 minus 40. All right, and this last part, number 6, also shows a unit box. Again, you just have to fill in your own. They don't tell you a unit. So you have to fill in all these missing numbers, though. Remember, sometimes you might want to use think addition to solve subtraction, but you solve it in whatever way works for you. Okay, when you're done with watching this video, you can post page 176, and you're going to respond to a template on Seesaw for today that has to do with the number grid puzzles we were learning about. All right, see you tomorrow.